Homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now let's continue our study of the Bodhicharyavatara, a text that offers a complete and accurate presentation of the Mahayana path with nothing omitted or mistaken. The Bodhicharyavatara is divided into two parts, the title and the main content. Yesterday we already discussed the title. We finished both the actual title and the translator's homage. Today we will discuss the main content. First, the reason for composing the text. Second, the context of the text. And third, the perfect conclusion. Basically, this refers to the preliminary topics of this commentary, the main body of this treatise, and finally, the conclusion. So, the text is explained in three sections. The first section is further divided into two parts. First, the actual explanation. Second, the explanation of the necessary connections. The first topic is further divided into three parts: the verse of homage, the verse of commitment, and the taking of a humble attitude. Earlier, we mentioned the reason for composing the text, which can also be understood as reason for entering into composition. This topic is explained in three parts. I sincerely hope that everyone participating in the study of the Bodhicharyavatara will not only understand the literal meaning of the verses, but also study the outlines arranged by Tokme Zangpo, as well as the content of the commentary. Please make sure to read these. 大多数都认为可能 I've learned the verses before. I've memorized the outlines. Your attitude towards studying texts is very important. If your mindset is not correct from the start, your study may not be successful. When we study any treatise, according to the authentic tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, the first requirement is to memorize its verses. This is the most basic requirement. For example, when studying the 5 great treatises, you must memorize the verses of each treatise. This is the first requirement. The second is that you must clearly understand how the outlines of this text are structured. All the outlines of the entire text, both major and minor, should be absolutely clear in your mind. The third point is that you should be able to explain the literal meaning of the verses without looking at the commentary. The fourth point is that you should discuss and analyze the content explained in each chapter, or the general meaning of each verse. Not only should you understand it literally, but you should also summarize its essential points. Then, break it down for detailed analysis and thorough study. For example, every important point must be carefully analyzed. These steps are absolutely necessary. If you simply skim over the literal meaning, this cannot be called studying the treatise. It's just listening to a transmission. So I sincerely hope everyone will follow the steps. About 5 or 6 years ago, I taught the Bodhicharyavatara once. At that time, I taught the verses using Patrul Rinpoche's outline. Patrul Rinpoche wrote an outline for the Bodhicharyavatara, which is called the Clear Mirror. This outline is exceptionally well structured. We used this outline at that time. Later, in the extensive commentary on the Bodhicharyavatara, we also use this outline. This time, we will not use that one. We follow Togme Zangpo's method of explanation and his approach to analysis. So I hope that during your study, you will clearly understand what content you need to memorize, especially for those present here. Most of you have already memorized all the verses of the Bodhicharyavatara before. I hope that this time, as we go through the text, since we won't cover much each day, you will keep up with the verses and be sure to memorize them well. Whether you are a monastic or a lay practitioner, if you fail to memorize the verses well, then your understanding of the content will likely remain unclear. The Bodhicharyavatara is not like the 5 great treatises. Some of our Dharma friends here have memorized the Abhidharma Kosha before, as well as texts on the topics of Madhyamaka and Pramana. Memorizing these is quite difficult for most people because the content is so profound. But for the Bodhicharyavatara, I've seen that every young monk in our monastery, even those around 10 years old, can recite it as fluently as chanting Avalokiteshvara's mantra. Now, I think among us here, some may already be quite elderly. Generally, for those in their 60s or 70s, it's okay not to memorize. For others, I think you should be able to. Whether you're a teenager or in your 50s or 60s, I believe people around 50 years old should have no problem memorizing. Truly, when it comes to learning, don't underestimate yourself. Don't think, oh, I'm already 40 or 50 years old. I definitely can't do it. You shouldn't think this way. Last year, during our examinations, many practitioners in their 60s also came to the shrine hall and recited many texts. At that time, they recited them very well, except that you may not see their teeth. Only their bright red tongues. Now then, today we'll discuss the verse of homage. First is the verse of homage. It was made by Shantideva before he composed his text. He first pays homage to his gurus. In other words, here he prostrates to the three jewels and other objects worthy of veneration. The verse goes like this. To those who go in bliss, the Dharmakaya they possess, and all their heirs, to all those worthy of respect, I reverently bow. This verse contains just these two lines. The literal meaning should be very clear to everyone. Here, those who go in bliss refers to the Buddha. Dharmakaya means the Dharma, and all their heirs refers to the Sangha. When we study Mahayana scriptures, the so-called Sangha jewel refers to bodhisattvas from the first bhumi and above. This is also explained in the Gateway to Knowledge and the Sutra of Recalling the Three Jewels. So, in Mahayana, the authentic Sangha should be bodhisattvas from the first bhumi and above. In this line, it also mentions the Dharmakaya they possess. Here on the surface, Dharmakaya seems to refer to the Dharmakaya among the three bodies of the Buddha. However, there are actually two ways to interpret this. One is relatively simple and easy to understand. The term Dharmakaya comes from Sanskrit. Here, Dharma means the Buddha's teachings, and Kaya refers to body. As explained by Bhutan Rinpoche in his great commentary on the Bodhicharyavatara, the term Kaya means a collection or aggregate. This meaning is directly derived from Sanskrit. So what does Dharmakaya mean? It refers to the aggregation of all kinds of Dharma, that is, many teachings. What kind of Dharma? The Dharma of transmission and of realization. The aggregation of scriptural teachings and realization is the Dharma jewel, as the name implies. This is very clear to everyone. So this verse includes the Buddha, his Dharma of transmission and Dharma of realization, as well as the Mahayana Sangha, such as great bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Maitreya, the noble sons of the Buddha. The word companion that follows means all or every. Here, Shantideva says that before I composed this text, before the Bodhicharyavatara was written, I reverently bow to the objects worthy of my prostration, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and I also prostrate to and venerate arhats among the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and all the stupas, spiritual teachers, and so forth in the world. All objects worthy of veneration and prostration, today I respectfully prostrate to them all. Who prostrates? I, Shantideva, prostrate here. He bows in the name of the author of the treatise. Now, how does he prostrate before them? The supreme prostration is made by encountering through the view. The middling prostration is made by training in meditation. And the lesser prostration is made out of devotion with body, speech, and mind. This is, in brief, the explanation of the homage verse. Now, let's take a look at how Tome Zangpo explained this particular homage verse. At the beginning, Dogme Zangpo explained the verses quite extensively. As he proceeded with the commentary, he gave very concise, literal explanations to the verses. So in the beginning, you may find the commentary so extensive that you can't find a root verse in a whole page. Please don't become discouraged. He was always so detailed for all verses. Some scholars of the Sakya tradition in the past were also like this. At the very beginning, they explained very extensively, and then gradually became more concise. Tome Zangpo also, in the very beginning, explained everything in great detail, but later on was briefer. Regarding Sugata, Acharya Universal Illumination offers an explanation. I explained this term when I was teaching the great commentary, according to a quote from the Pramanavartika. You can also refer to that yourself. Here, as recognized in both Han and Tibetan Buddhism, the Buddha has 10 epithets. For example, Tathagata, Arhat, Samyak Sambuddha, teacher of gods and humans, unsurpassed one, Bhagavan, Sugata, and so forth. There are 10 epithets for the Buddha. Among these 10 epithets, one of them is called Sugata, one who goes in bliss. As we discussed recently, among the 8 Indian commentators, there was one whose name means universal illumination. He wrote a very famous commentary on the Bodhicharyavatara. In this, he holds the following view. Because of having gone in an excellent way, Buddhas are called Sugata. He explains it as excellently gone. Su means good, and gata means to go. So it literally means well gone. Of course, gone should not be misunderstood. It doesn't mean to have died or to have passed away. It means that one has gone from samsara to the other shore in a most excellent way. That is the deeper implied meaning. So the meaning of Sugata is Su means good, excellent, or perfectly accomplished. Gata means to have gone. And gone to where? Gone to the place of nirvana. From this shore, one has reached the other shore. Not long ago, when I was teaching the Heart Sutra, I also explained this point. Therefore, Sugata also means excellently gone, well gone. And gone here certainly doesn't mean physically walking. The term Su, meaning good, can appear in many contexts. For example, to describe the Buddha's physical beauty. We can describe the Buddha's physical signs and marks to be good. Or we say the Buddha is good at purifying illnesses. When all sicknesses are cleared away, even the bird flu gone without a trace. That too can be called excellently purifying and eliminating. Another phrase is excellently filled precious vase. When the precious vase is completely full, filled with nectar or milk. We also use the expression excellently filled. Though Su is an adjective, it can be applied in many different contexts. Thus, Tathagata can also be understood as one who has gone excellently. This is the reason for such a name. Why is the Tathagata called one who has gone excellently? After eliminating all obscurations, such as emotional obscurations, he has gone majestically. This means from the first bhumi to the 7th bhumi, all the innate emotional obscurations and the imputed emotional obscurations have been eliminated. So all have been completely severed. Therefore, it's called going majestically. After dispelling the ignorance of not knowing suchness and so forth, he goes without regression. Regarding going without regression, it means from the 8th to the 10th bhumi, the cognitive obscurations are completely eliminated. In other words, in the 3 pure bhumis, the ignorance of not understanding suchness is purified. The other day, when teaching the adornment of the middle way, we analyzed these obscurations very clearly. This is about going without regression. After cleansing all habitual tendencies, he goes ultimately. This should be at the level of Buddhahood. When reaching the final Vajra-like samadhi, all the habitual obscurations of the afflictions and defilement are purified. Relying on the Vajra-like samadhi, one eliminates the most subtle habitual tendencies and obscurations, and one attains the fruition of Buddhahood. Therefore, we can call this going ultimately. This is explained from the perspective of the quality of abandonment. Just now, we explained what one abandons by going from the 1st to the 10th bhumi and finally through to Buddhahood. When we studied the ornament of clear realization, we discussed that we should seek to attain the 3 kinds of greatness of the Buddha. What are these 3 greatness? One is greatness of abandonment, one is greatness of realization, and one is greatness of mind. Greatness of abandonment means the perfection of what is to be abandoned. Everything that should be abandoned has been completely abandoned. The greatness of realization means both the wisdom knowing all phenomena and the wisdom knowing reality as it is are realized. In terms of greatness of mind, it means his compassion, his great compassion has been perfected. When we study the Bodhicharyavatara, trying to emulate bodhisattvas, conduct, or to liberate sentient beings, we should have these 3 purposes, which is to actualize these 3 greatnesses, these 3 forms of greatness. Now we have finished the explanation from the perspective of abandonment. Master Kalyanadeva also commented on this. The Venerable Kalyanadeva holds that because of realizing all that is to be realized, the Buddha is called Sugata. He explains this term from the perspective of realization. Because the Buddha has realized the true nature of all phenomena. In summary, precisely because of have perfected the qualities of abandonment and realization, or reached the place of supreme bliss, the Buddha is called Sugata, therefore, When we carefully and thoroughly study the Buddha's epithets in such detail, we can see there is a profound meaning behind them. In conclusion, we can say, why is the Buddha called Sugata? The term Sugata means all qualities have been perfected, and all obscurations that should be abandoned have been completely purified. Patrul Rinpoche also explained that by relying on the blissful path to enlightenment, one attains the great blissful fruition of Buddhahood. This is what he meant by Sugata. When he explained this term, he said that the path to enlightenment is a blissful one. Many people don't study the Dharma, but once someone truly does, they will personally experience the deep benefit it brings to their lives. It makes your thinking healthier and your daily activities more balanced. Everything becomes fulfilling and meaningful in your life, and you will experience it for yourself. This shows that the path to enlightenment is indeed a blissful one. On the surface, it may seem that we also need to engage in ascetic practices and spend eons accumulating merit and wisdom. Some of these descriptions may sound quite intimidating, but in reality, our ascetic practices are not physical ones endured by ordinary people. It is more about our mental attitude and inner resolve. When seeking the authentic Dharma, these worldly hardships don't seem like suffering at all for genuine practitioners. Such effort does not feel painful. Thus, it is through a blissful path that one attains true happiness. This is also how Patrul Rinpoche explained it. In earlier times, there was a master named Dipamkara Atisha. He explained that by eliminating all suffering and realizing all qualities, one is called Sugata. That is another way of explaining this term, as stated in the treatise on the stages of the Bodhisattva path. Proceeding to the supreme state, going without regression, one is called Sugata. All the above is about the Buddha jewel. In summary, whether it is Shantideva or ourselves, we should truly take refuge in and pay homage to the Buddha. After all, we are followers of the Buddha, so we should constantly remember the Buddha in our hearts and pay reverence at all times. If you are a practitioner of sharp faculties with mindfulness and awareness, whether working by day or resting at night, you will never lose mindfulness of the Buddha. This is the most basic conduct expected of a Buddhist practitioner. If for 2 or 3 days, or for several days, we never recall the Buddha's kindness and hardly hold him in our thoughts, then we can hardly be called true Buddhists. That's why, during class, we recite the liturgy of Buddha Shakyamuni every day. This is how I think about it. If we, as Buddhists, don't recite it daily, it seems that most people may have already made the commitment to recite it every day. So if we don't recite it, on one hand we're breaking our previous vows. On the other hand, as Buddhists, even if your mental strength can't keep up, at least you should recite some prayers of the Buddha daily. This is very necessary. So I decided that we all recite the liturgy to Buddha Shakyamuni together before class. This time, I really hope that those who haven't studied the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni before will read it within this year during our study of the Bodhicharyavatara, as I reminded everyone a couple of days ago. Because this is something important, I'll remind you again and again. When I remind you, I hope you won't just let it go in one ear and out the other. Reading it will be meaningful for each of you. It's not because it will bring me benefit. For example, if you read it, my status will improve or something. It's not like that. It's best if you take a look at the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. Our great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, during his causal stage, with what kind of mindset did he study the Dharma? It's not at all what some Buddhists nowadays imagine. It's completely different. In this regard, you should have a deep understanding. This is one point. The second point is, I also very much hope that all Buddhists, no matter what school or what group you belong to, will try to recite some liturgy to Buddha Shakyamuni. Of course, each school has different liturgies. To me, when I previously translated White Lotus, the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, which is about 1,000 pages in Chinese, 500 pages in Tibetan, it took nearly 5 months to translate those 500 pages to Chinese. During translation, I was deeply moved. and I developed a different kind of faith in Buddha Shakyamuni than before later, I also asked everyone to recite the liturgy to Buddha Shakyamuni composed by Mipham Rinpoche. I think each of you should be able to find a way to obtain it. It's best to recite it once every day. Reciting it once like this, the merit is truly inconceivable. Whether your mind can concentrate or not, simply reciting it once, the merit should be quite great. So here we see that Shantideva, in his own composition, also respectfully prostrates before the Buddha. Of course, no matter who we are, we should prostrate before the Buddha. Before the actual Buddha, needless to say. But as it says in the letter to a friend, wise people will prostrate very respectfully, even before a Buddha statue carved from wood. This is the choice and the behavior of a wise person. This is paying homage to the Buddha. Next, we'll discuss paying homage to the Dharma. How is the Dharma explained? The so-called Dharmakaya, as stated in the Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Dharmakaya should be known as two, the perfect immaculate Dharmadhatu, and the favorable conditions for this, the teachings in their profound and manifold aspects. It is explained this way in the Uttara Tantra Shastra. The so-called Dharmakaya has two aspects. One is what we usually talk about, the naturally abiding, pure Dharmakaya. The other is the Dharmakaya realized through purification of adventitious stains in our mind stream. From the perspective of the three kayas, the Dharmakaya should have two types. Here it is also explained as two, the utterly unstained Dharmakaya, which is the state where the Buddha personally realized the true nature of all phenomena. This is called one type of Dharmakaya, the primordially pure Dharmakaya. There is another type, the favorable conditions for this, the teachings in their profound and manifold aspects. The favorable conditions for this means the cause conducive to the realization of the Dharmakaya, the nature of all phenomena. Here, the conditions refers to its cause. What is this cause? It is the teachings in their profound and manifold aspects that can lead to realization of Dharmakaya. All teachings of the 12 branches of texts within the Tripitaka, including sutras and tantras, are all included in this Dharmakaya. In summary, the so-called Dharmakaya is divided into two aspects. One is the Dharmakaya of realization. The other is the Dharmakaya of scriptural teachings. What is the Dharmakaya of realization? The so-called Dharmakaya of realization is the state of Buddhahood realized within our own mind stream. Of course, from a conventional perspective, as we mentioned a couple of days ago, we meditate together every morning at 6 o'clock. At that time, if bodhicitta arises in your mind stream, or if compassion or a sense of respect for the three jewels arises, this is called the Dharmakaya of realization. What is the fundamental cause that can produce it? It is the Dharma taught by our spiritual teachers, or the canonical texts left behind by the Buddha and later great masters, the very precious sutras and treatises. All of these belong to the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya here on the surface seems to be one of the three kayas, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. It seems that the homage is first made to the Buddha and then to his Dharmakaya. If so, it would seem the author doesn't venerate the Dharma jewel, but we should not see it that way, because according to the Uttara Tantra Shastra's view, the authentic Dharma refers to the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, or our primordially pure essence. So the Dharma jewel is already included in it. Once all our afflictions are completely abandoned, we actualize the truth of cessation. So what method do we rely on to abandon them? Of course, it is by relying on the 5 paths, 10 bhumis, and the 37 factors of enlightenment, or by relying on skillful means to abandon them. This is called the truth of the path. So the Dharma jewel also refers to the truth of cessation and the truth of the path. When we previously taught the Abhidharma Kosha regarding the meaning of the 3 jewels, we analyzed it thoroughly, which you all should remember. In the Hinayana and Mahayana, the 3 jewels are expressed somewhat differently, and the objects they refer to are not exactly the same. But here, it should be explained this way. According to the Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Dharmakaya of realization is the Dharmadhatu, which exists as the field of experience of the primordial wisdom possessing twofold purity. Simply put, The Dharmakaya of realization actually is the Buddha's individual realization, which is indivisible from the nature of the Dharmadhatu. It is also known as the Svabhavika Kaya. This is about the Dharmakaya of realization. The Dharmakaya of scriptural teachings refers to all the profound and various canonical teachings, expounding the two truths, or the Dharma jewel. The so-called Dharmakaya of scriptural teachings refers to all that explain the two truths, the ultimate truth and the conventional truth. For example, all teachings expounding topics of prajnaparamita, or emptiness, are included in the teachings of the ultimate truth. Teachings of the conventional truth refer to texts like the Sutra of 100 Deeds, the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, and so forth. All treatises and sutras are included in the Dharmakaya of scriptural teachings. What are the objects worthy of our prostration? They are the realizations that arise in people's mind streams. These are what we should venerate. Whoever has bodhicitta in their minds, whoever has renunciation in their minds, and whoever has realized emptiness in their minds deserves our homage, because such a being is a genuine bodhisattva, a genuine arhat. We can indeed put it that way. Another object worthy of our veneration is the written words, language, scriptures, and so forth that lead to these realizations. These too are worthy of our homage. What does the Buddha jewel in this world refer to? In the past, it was Buddha Shakyamuni, whose qualities of abandonment and realization were perfected. Now the Buddha jewel refers to all the Buddha statues enshrined in each monastery. As Buddhists, whenever we encounter Buddha statues, whether from Tibetan Buddhism, Han Buddhism, or Theravada Buddhism, all the images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, of the 10 directions represented by Buddha Shakyamuni, we should respectfully prostrate to them. This is a basic conduct of us as Buddhists. Just now, we also talked about the Dharma jewel, the Dharmakaya of scriptures. Some people think when they see the Diamond Sutra, this is something that should be respectfully prostrated to. But when they see Theravada Buddhist scriptures, they think, oh, forget it, this isn't what I study, I won't respectfully prostrate. When they see Tibetan Buddhist scriptures, they also won't show respect. Such sectarian bias is very unfortunate. None. As long as it is a pure Dharma teaching transmitted from the Buddha, we should show equal reverence. There is truly no need to make distinctions. A narrow mind limits one's own spiritual growth, and in the end becomes an obstacle to genuine practice. Shantideva respectfully prostrates to all the scriptural teachings and realizations equally without differentiation. I think that if a tremendously great realized master like Shantideva respectfully prostrated before the three jewels, what level of realization we have in our mind streams. We should also be clear about this. What reason do we have not to prostrate to the Dharma jewel? We certainly should. After studying these teachings, you should also make the vow in your hearts. In the future, whatever kind of Buddha image I see, I will bow down with devotion. If you have this in your mind, then whatever Buddhist monastery you make a pilgrimage to in the future, that intention will be very helpful for yourself. I once heard about a lay practitioner who said, I am a Han Chinese Buddhist. In my own monastery, I often prostrate respectfully. But when I went to the Potala Palace, I was just there as a tourist. Even in front of the Joa Buddha statue, I didn't prostrate. He seemed to think he was doing the right thing, but I don't think that's correct. It only shows that our discrimination is strong and we lack wisdom. In Lhasa, in addition to the Joa Buddha statue, there are so many other authentic sacred Buddha statues, so many holy images, yet he didn't make a single prostration. He thought that knowing a bit of Han Buddhism gave him confidence, but that confidence may not be well-founded. Some of us practitioners feel certain about our understanding, but in fact, that certainty might be deceiving. Truly, sometimes our own arrogance is a very frightening thing. A couple of days ago, someone called me. She said she had been studying for more than 10 years. Now she doesn't need to study any treatises of the sutra tradition anymore. She said a lot. After she finished speaking, I thought, well, that's quite good. I really admired her. The next day she called me again. At first I hesitated to answer, but it kept ringing, so I had to answer. When I picked up, there was no voice, just the sound of crying. I said, what's wrong? Tell me what happened. Gradually, she managed to speak. She said, today I am in tremendous pain, but although I am in great pain, I don't hate my husband at all. I said, I don't yet understand this situation. Why are you crying? What happened? After crying for quite a while, she could finally tell me. She said, today I told my husband frankly, I've already studied Buddhism for more than 10 years now. Whatever you've been hiding, tell me. I can handle whatever you tell me well. You don't need to worry at all. Later, her husband told her, I actually didn't want to tell you. I've been hiding it all along. But since you say it like this, I hope you won't be upset. After all, you promised you wouldn't be. I have another woman. And he continued describing it. The woman continued to say to me, she said, I'm not angry at all. I completely understand. But when life wasn't good for us, when we were poor and struggling, my husband was very good to me. Now what should I do? I want to become a nun. Although she said she wasn't angry at all, from her words, I could tell she was extremely angry. So when she expressed her wish to ordain, I said, you should calm down. Don't rush into ordination. Ordination isn't like this. Yesterday, you told me that your realization is very high and you don't need to study anymore. But now, as I see it, you may still need to study. Think carefully about what you just said and your reaction. Indeed, sometimes many of us Buddhists behave like this, believing that we no longer need to study. We seem to think we understand everything. Perhaps we have learned some teachings from just one tradition, but have we truly studied these teachings thoroughly? We should ask ourselves honestly, if we have not yet learned them well, then we should continue studying, and not only study, but also practice. If you don't practice, merely relying on theoretical learning of the Dharma to destroy the afflictions in your mind stream is very difficult. Our great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, also said this in the King of Samadhi Sutra. The Buddha said, I have already taught you the methods of liberation. After teaching them, you must practice them yourself. If you don't practice, it's like a sick person who has obtained a lot of medicine but doesn't take any of it. Can it help with their illness? It can't be useful. In the same way, the Dharma must be practiced. I think for those of us here, truly we do need practice. We probably have some level of understanding of the principles of the Dharma. But if you don't practice yourself, the Dharma is just the Dharma, and your own mind stream remains unchanged. When we studied Opening the Door of the Mind training last year, it said that between the practitioner and the realization of Dharma, there is a gap so wide that even a horse could run between them. If this is the case, then our mind stream will run contrary to the authentic Dharma and cannot align with it at all. Therefore, no matter what kind of Dharma you hear, regularly familiarize yourself with it so that you can merge it with your mind. What is called practice, according to the instructions from the Kadam tradition? There are two types of practice, analytical meditation and stabilizing meditation. The so-called stabilizing meditation probably requires going to a quiet place, a place where there's no one, where there are no noisy sounds. You sit still with Vairocana's 7-point posture or any other posture suitable for you and then observe the mind. This is the stabilizing meditation method. In terms of analytical meditation, it can mean that we repeatedly contemplate the content we discuss each day. Try to make the duration of your contemplation as long as possible. Extend it as much as possible. This process is called meditation. Some people say, I need to meditate now. I can't study and contemplate. Actually, hearing, contemplating and meditating should complement each other. We can put it that way. So in our daily activities, we may prostrate to the Buddha jewel and recite the refuge verse. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha every day. It's easy to perform such activities, but our hearts may not truly engage. If we're just saying it verbally without confident faith, when afflictions arise in our minds, I'm afraid our practice will prove fragile. Many Buddhists talk big, but actually when they encounter situations like the one with the woman I just mentioned, they may regret, I shouldn't have talked so big. This can happen, so we really do need to practice. The sutras also say this, without practice, realization can never arise. If one does not practice this Dharma, one cannot see the nature of reality. So if you don't practice the Dharma, it's impossible to realize the Dharma nature. Merely by seeing or hearing about water, how can thirst be quenched? So the meaning of the quote is that if we don't practice the Dharma, we can never realize the Dharma nature. It's like seeing or hearing about water, but not drinking it. Can our thirst be quenched? Of course not. If I just sit there and there's a continuously flowing river nearby and I just look at it, just watch it and say, this is water, I can hear the sound of water. And in this case, although the water is there, I'm still thirsty. Likewise, we may talk about the Dharma very well and others may listen and understand clearly, but in truth, we may never have genuinely merged it with our minds. For example, every day we say, Bodhicitta, 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 but do we truly think that all beings have been our parents, or that we want to liberate all beings? If such thoughts never arise, then our Bodhicitta remains only words. When you truly die, or in your next life, will it have any effect? It does have the effect of planting virtuous roots, that is without doubt, but you never gain the merit of integrating it into your mind stream. So this time, when teaching the Bodhicharyavatara, I sincerely hope that everyone, of course, in my own mind stream, I have no qualities at all, and leading others is almost laughable. But still, in my heart, I hope that many of us should avoid being entangled merely in words. Let us not stop at texts alone. We should combine the knowledge we've learned with our own practice. This way, it will have real benefit for our mind streams. This is about the Dharma jewel. The Dharma jewel is explained in this way. Because the Dharmakaya is possessed by the Sugata Tathagata. In the original Tibetan, there's a word possessed that follows the Sugata Tathagata, but it wasn't translated in the Chinese version because the Sugata possesses the Dharmakaya. That's why in Tibetan it has this word. The word possess represents that Sugata embodies Dharmakaya. The heirs of the Buddha refer to the noble Sangha. Now, we'll discuss the Sangha. The Mahayana Sangha refers to bodhisattvas from the first bhumi, and above, everyone should be clear about this. Most of us think the Buddha is the Buddha statue. The Dharma is the Dharma jewel, which means scriptures like the Diamond Sutra. The Sangha is the head senior and junior monks in the monasteries, including the novice monks. We may think like this. Of course, thinking this way isn't wrong. When we studied finding rest in the nature of mind, we also approached the topic in that way. Still, such an understanding is partial. From a partial perspective, you can understand it this way. But on the ultimate level, as we just explained, the Buddha is the Sugata, the well-gone one. But the ultimate Buddha is the Tathagata Garbha, dwelling in each sentient being's mind. The Dharma consists of Dharma of transmission and Dharma of realization. The Sangha consists of Mahayana Bodhisattvas. We can also explain it this way. Regarding these concepts about the three jewels and their qualities, they're also explained in the Gateway to Knowledge. In Finding Rest in the Nature of Mind, the Sutra of Recalling the Three Jewels, as well as in the Uttara Tantra Shastra. I hope everyone will study this earnestly and carefully. Regarding the heirs of the Buddha, the Uttara Tantra Shastra says this: those whose seed is devotion towards the Supreme Vehicle, whose mother is analytical wisdom generating the Buddha qualities, whose abode is the blissful womb of meditative stability, and whose nurse is compassion, are heirs born to succeed the Muni. This is how Uttara Tantra Shastra explains it. What do the heirs of the Buddha refer to? Generally, it refers to what we usually call Mahayana Bodhisattvas, but according to the quote from the Uttara Tantra Shastra, there are four causes that can lead to the birth of Bodhisattvas, the Buddha's heirs. Four fundamental causes are the source of the heirs of the Buddha, according to this Shastra. So what are these four causes? The first is having faith in the Supreme Vehicle. The faith is like a seed. In the past, for a Chakravartin prince to be a king, he needed four conditions: the king's lineage as the seed, the king's queen who gives birth to him, the abode of her womb, and the nurse who nourishes the child as he grows. There are the four conditions or reasons. Maitreya also used this analogy to teach the four causes for the birth of Mahayana Bodhisattvas. The first one is the genuine faith in the Mahayana Dharma, which corresponds to the seed. So if we truly want to generate Bodhicitta, first, we must have faith in the Mahayana Dharma. If you have no faith in the Mahayana Dharma at all, it's like the seed has already been burned and destroyed. This is the first one. The second is the mother, which is analytical wisdom generating the Buddha qualities. What gives rise to Buddha and to the Dharma? It is the mother of Prajnaparamita, or emptiness. In other words, a Chakravartin prince is born from his mother's womb. In the same way, The fruition of bodhisattvahood comes from realizing emptiness. Realizing emptiness is like the mother. This is the second cause. The third cause is the bliss of meditation, abiding in meditative equipoise, where the mind remains unwavering, or where the mind is not distracted, this kind of bliss of meditation. This bliss of meditation corresponds to the womb. To produce a Chakravartin prince, there must be a womb, because the Chakravartin is, after all, born from the womb. Then the fourth is great compassion for sentient beings. Great compassion for sentient beings must never cease, even after you attain the fruition of bodhisattvahood. Just like after the Chakravartin prince is born, he still needs a nurse to nurture and raise him, so too a bodhisattva requires compassion to mature. This is why, in the introduction to the middle way, it said that compassion is always important, whether in the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of one's spiritual practice. In all three stages, one cannot be separated from it. The reason for praising compassion lies exactly here. With these four causes, one can then become a bodhisattva, that is, a Mahayana heir of the Buddha, who will ultimately attain Buddhahood. Mahayana heirs of the Buddha. These bodhisattvas arise through these four causes. That is the meaning here, since they're born into the Tathagata lineage, or they can become heirs of the Tathagata. In a root verse of Bodhicharyavatara, it also says, born into the family of the Tathagata. The meaning is that upon attaining the first bhumi, the ultimate bodhicitta has already arisen in one's mind. At that time, we call them genuine heirs of the Buddha. Both in name and meaning, they have completely become heirs of the Buddha. Of course, when we give rise to bodhicitta on the path of accumulation, we are also called bodhisattvas, or Buddha's heirs. But from the ultimate perspective, at that time, we are only bodhisattvas in name. The text here tells us who are truly called Buddha's heirs, both in name and meaning. Therefore, the heirs of the Buddha, the realized bodhisattvas, are the Sangha jewel. So here, Acharya Shantideva says, the object of homage should be those who have already realized the selflessness of the individual and the selflessness of phenomena, who have eliminated emotional obscurations and portions of cognitive obscurations. Such ones as Manjushri, Maitreya, and others like Nagarjuna and so forth, who have already attained the first bhumi, or above these noble ones, are the object of our prostration. Therefore, first we should prostrate to the Buddha jewel and to the Dharma jewel, and also to Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, Kshitigarbha, and so forth. Before these heirs of the Buddha, we should prostrate respectfully. Of course, there are the commonly recognized 8 great bodhisattvas. Actually, among people, among us, there are also many individuals who have truly generated bodhicitta in their hearts. In some biographies of Manjushri, and also in some Mahayana sutras, it's said that Manjushri manifests in all kinds of identities to liberate sentient beings. Actually, it's just that we cannot recognize them. Among the ordinary monks or practitioners and among ordinary people, there are also countless bodhisattvas, so before them as well we should prostrate to the 3 jewels, the object of refuge, including the Sangha jewel. So the object of our prostration are the 3 jewels who are the object of our refuge. And also, although they're not objects of refuge in the Mahayana, but generally speaking, those of excellent qualities, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, as well as the refuge masters who transmitted the precepts to us, the preceptors and also the acharyas and so forth, before all objects worthy of homage, the author prostrates respectfully with body, speech, and mind. This is how the commentary explains the object of homage. In some other commentaries, it's explained in a similar way. For example, Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, one's own acharyas and preceptors who transmitted the precepts, as well as stupas of both Mahayana and Hinayana and Buddha statues, we should pay homage, including our own gurus' stupas containing relics and their remains, and also places where the guru previously turned the Dharma wheel, places where they were born, and also the Dharma centers where the guru manifested various activities of teaching and benefiting beings. These places we should also pay homage. In the past, when Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche taught the Bodhicharyavatara, he also expressed this same point He said that not only should we prostrate to the three jewels in general, but also to all that worthy of our respect, many others that are not explicitly listed here, especially the spiritual teachers relying on whom we arouse bodhicitta and attain the supreme realization in our mind streams. If the Guru is not present, we should prostrate to his residence, to his dwelling, and also to places he previously lived in and bestowed blessings. For example, on the road from here to Chengdu, in areas like Miyaluo or Wenchuan, there are hotels where Chojie once stayed. Seeing them, I too often feel sincere devotion, but I haven't actually prostrated myself, because now by the roadside there are crowds of people everywhere. If you get out of the car to prostrate, everyone would probably think I'd lost my mind. But in my heart, I truly want to prostrate very much. That day when we went to Kunming, we passed by a hotel where His Holiness once stayed on his pilgrimage to Mount Jizu. When we passed its entrance, I really wanted to prostrate, although the Guru is not present now. That hotel blessed by him is completely different from other buildings. That was truly what I felt in my heart at the time. I haven't finished the topic above. When His Holiness was teaching the Bodhicharyavatara, he also mentioned that in the Tibetan tradition there was a truly remarkable great guru called Drukchen Rinpoche. His guru was Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. He once said, "I want to prostrate to my teacher Khyentse Rinpoche. Not only will I prostrate to the guru's residence, I will also prostrate to the guru's dog, the guru's yaks, and so forth. I will prostrate to all related to him." At first glance we might think, is there something wrong with this person? Prostrating to people, also prostrating to dogs, and also prostrating to other things like yaks and such. But in fact, for someone who has genuine realization, or at least a degree of spiritual attainment, this is simply their way of repaying gratefulness. When expressing gratefulness, sometimes there is no better way. Moreover, every teacher will someday leave this world. When they are no longer with us, we should make prostrations to their residences and quarters. Recently, there is one Khenpo at our own academy who goes to the opposite side of His Holiness' former hut every day with his attendant. They rent a small room there and prostrate to His Holiness' hut each day. One day, I asked the attendant, "What are you two doing there every day?" He said, "The Khenpo requires that we come here every day to prostrate to His Holiness' house." So indeed, when we think of the teacher from whom we gained the Dharma and received blessings, we should regard his dwelling places and his teaching sites with heartfelt reverence whenever we see them. A deep sense of devotion will naturally arise from within. A teacher overseas once said something similar. He said, "Every night I prostrate to my parents." I find this very meaningful. Although he was a monastic, he regarded his parents as a precious field of kindness for nurturing him. We can indeed call it a field of kindness. So we should prostrate not only to our masters, but also to our parents, and of course to the three jewels as well. Because bowing destroys arrogance within our minds, we should all make prostrations. So by this chance, I hope that each morning when you get up, you will respectfully bow before a Buddha statue or before your Dharma texts, and before you go to sleep at night, don't forget to make 3 prostrations. It takes no more than a minute or two to make 3 prostrations. So I encourage everyone to prostrate to all objects worthy of honor and reverence. We should make it our habit. In your daily conduct, make it a habit of making prostrations whenever you encounter objects worthy of veneration. In fact, the sutras teach this as well, that the places where the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, where he was born, attained enlightenment, and entered parinirvana. These are known as the 4 sacred sites of India. Regarding these 4 sacred sites, the Buddha explained them clearly in the scriptures, saying, "After my passing, if anyone makes offerings and prostrations to these 4 sacred places, it will be no different from paying homage directly to me." Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should also bow to these 4 sacred sites. We should also venerate the places where our own masters taught the Dharma, where they were born, and where they passed into parinirvana. All of these are worthy of our prostration. No one can say what our academy will become in a few decades, say 20 years later. Even if nothing remains but an empty wall or a desolate field, we should still bow before it. Why? Because this is the place that nourished the body of my wisdom. It is, so to speak, the source of my wisdom body. Although my physical body was born from my parents, my body of wisdom has arisen through the blessings of gurus, and through their kindness I have come to this day. Had these masters not propagated the Dharma so widely, most of us would still remain deluded even today. That is the simple truth. So although we are by no means great realized beings, we now possess a measure of right view and faith in the Dharma. This, among so many people in the world, is truly a rare and precious thing. The sutras also say it is rare to hear the Dharma, rare to gain human rebirth, and rarer still to have faith and get ordination. So attaining a human life is already hard, and meeting the Dharma is even rarer. Especially for those who have genuine faith and have ordained. Such connections are exceedingly rare. So in the future, no matter what happens, to whichever of your gurus, whether your refuge guru or gurus from whom you've received the Dharma, always keep a heart of respectful devotion. This is crucial. As for why offering praise and homage is necessary, the sutra on praising the qualities of the Buddha says, even a small offering made to the blessed teacher brings the joy of gods and men and leads to the deathless state. Here it says that even making a very small offering to the Buddha, such as offering a lamp or a single stick of incense or just a few simple flowers, on the surface it seems insignificant. Therefore, we should frequently make such offerings before Buddha images and scriptures. This is very important. Here it says that temporarily one attains the bliss of gods and humans and ultimately the supreme noble fruit. The purpose of making homage is to accomplish both temporary benefit and ultimate happiness. All right, let's stop here for today.
Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye